The PS5 came out all the way back in 2020, and now that 5 years are close to having passed, the console has developed a tidy collection of single-player titles. While there are several games for fans of single-player titles to experience, we managed to narrow this list down to 60 of the best, must-play single-player experiences that the PS5 has to offer. Atomfall. Atomfall represents an interesting experiment by Rebellion, a studio known for its World War II-based series of games, where you take control of an elite sniper taking down hundreds of Nazi soldiers. Instead of arming the player to the gills and taking them through a roaring adventure, Atomfall instead makes sure the player is constantly scavenging for resources just to survive as they slowly uncover an epic story through their own investigations. Atomfall offers a unique single-player experience that blends investigation, stealth, survival, and just a hint of intense combat to really keep things spicy. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Picking up directly after the events of Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth takes us deeper into an epic story, all about environmentalism and the evils that megacorporations are capable of when allowed an unchecked monopoly. This time around, however, we get a massive open world to explore, complete with its own set of secrets for players to discover, as well as a host of fun minigames that help further flesh the world out. Pair this with an evolution of the already fantastic combat system from its predecessor, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth tends to make for dozens of hours of pure fun. Silent Hill 2 Remake. Trying to remake a game that is seen by many as one of, if not the very best horror games ever made is certainly no easy task, but Bloober Team managed to make it look almost effortless with its remake of Silent Hill 2. Much more than just a remake, however, Bloober Team's Silent Hill 2 gives us a look at how the seminal horror game would have been if it were made in the modern day. None of its feels really remotely dated, even at all, and the game makes use of the dense atmosphere and spookiness of its setting perfectly here. Pair this with gorgeous visuals, incredible level design, and wonderful creature design, if very, very scary, and you basically get one of the best horror experiences out there today. The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. While it may have been a bit controversial to say the least when it first came out, The Last of Us Part 2 features downright phenomenal storytelling thanks to strong writing and excellent voice work and facial capture. The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered features some of the best third-person action combat in any game today. Add on top of that wonderful encounter design and clever but tense boss fights, and you get what essentially feels like a wild roller coaster ride of emotions, along with high-octane third-person action. Elden Ring plus Shadow of the Erdtree. What hasn't already been said about the brilliance of From Software's single-player opus Elden Ring, as well as its critically acclaimed DLC, Shadow of the Erdtree? The base game on its own is a culmination of over a decade's worth of game design that From Software had originated, improved, and ultimately mastered. Add on top of that some excellent intense combat, plenty of character build options, and a wide open world where only your own skill level can really block your path. And you have a title that easily deserves just about every accolade it has gotten since then. And once you're done with the base game, Shadow of the Erdtree offers an entirely new level of challenge, complete with a brand new landmass to explore, new bosses to fight, and even more of the intricate lore to uncover. Astrobot. Astrobot is a game that proves that Nintendo isn't the only major gaming company that can make a beloved 3D platformer. The title, essentially a love letter to just about every aspect of PlayStation, also manages to be a great game all on its own, thanks to its excellent level design, great visuals, fantastic soundtrack, and really tight gameplay. While the story is simple enough, sure, with Captain Astro trying to reunite with the Play Squadron after the PS5 mothership is wrecked by Nebulax, what really elevates Astrobot, along with its core gameplay, is the reverence it has for all things PlayStation. The game is also filled with plenty of nods and references to the history of the console, including even references to niche titles like Loco Roco. Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered. While the 2017 release of Horizon Zero Dawn was no slouch when it came to visuals and gameplay, the whole game got massively upgraded thanks to the remastered release, bringing it up to par with its sequel. Essentially an origin story, players are put into the shoes of Aloy, who is trying to figure out how she can stop the wars between the neighboring tribes. Along the way, plenty of mysteries are uncovered, including the very nature of the world and the mechanical beasts that roam its lands. Horizon Zero Dawn is an excellent open-world action-adventure game, which offers a great mix of strong writing in its main campaign, as well as plenty of optional objectives through side quests, as well as open-world collectibles. Assassin's Creed Shadows. While Valhalla was met with mixed reception, especially with some of its gameplay elements, Assassin's Creed Shadows is evidence that the genre is still capable of strong games with fun open worlds to explore. Besides Syndicate, we now get to play as two distinct protagonists in Assassin's Creed Shadows, each with their own distinct playstyles: the combat-oriented Yasuke and the stealth-oriented Naoe. Through the two characters, we get a unique take on Sengoku-era Japan, with the duo trying to figure out the conspiracy behind not only the death of Oda Nobunaga, but also the death of Naoe's family as well. Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3 features incredibly strong writing full of interesting things to do, as well as by offering players an almost seemingly infinite amount of freedom when it comes to figuring out solutions to problems. Baldur's Gate 3 takes place during an invasion by mind flayers, with the player themselves being implanted with a tadpole that will, at some point, also turn them into a mind flayer. Good times. After escaping from the captivity of the mind flayers, the player finds themselves, along with some other unlikely heroes, on an island, where they must work together to figure out a way to not only make it to the city of Baldur's Gate, but also to get rid of the parasitic tadpoles that they have all been implanted with, unfortunately. Days Gone Remastered. Days Gone offers a unique take on the open-world zombie survival game by giving the player one of the most important tools you can have in such a situation: a motorcycle. Along with his bike, protagonist Deacon St. John must explore the world, deliver supplies, protect his friends, and, in the process, hopefully, figure out what led to the Freaker outbreak and how he can actually save his wife. The game also has a unique system that allows for incredibly massive hordes of zombies, known as Freakers, to attack the player if Deacon accidentally, or maybe on purpose, trips an alarm that attracts them to his location. Coupled with fun combat courtesy of a melee and ranged weapons, and Days Gone Remastered has all of the ingredients to make for a really fun time. Dead Space Remake. The original Dead Space was rightfully praised for its excellent atmosphere and strong gameplay, paired with intense claustrophobia and incredible monster designs in the form of the Necromorphs. The remake of Dead Space takes these elements and cranks it all the way up to 11, while you're still going to be stepping into the shoes of Isaac Clarke as he explores the USG Ishimura. Several things have been redesigned, from the massive Planet Cracker class ship's layout making more sense here, to weapons getting rebalanced so that the plasma cutter isn't the only good weapon you have access to. The story also gets some expansion thanks to Isaac no longer being a silent protagonist. The presence of a new kind of collectible also ends up adding a few more interesting wrinkles to an already strong story. Resident Evil Village. A few years after the series managed to reinvigorate itself thanks to Resident Evil 7, the franchise decided to take a more action-oriented approach. Much like the transition from classic horror Resident Evil games to Resident Evil 3, Resident Evil Village ups the ante on not only the action, but also the scares and the story. Taking place after the events of RE7, Village involves protagonist Ethan Winters once more setting out against unimaginable horrors in a mysterious village to rescue his daughter. The title features plenty of boss fights, great combat encounters, and one of the most insane endings to a game out there, which is saying something. The Winters expansion also brings with it new content, as well as a third-person mode for the main campaign. The first title by Studio Sandfall Interactive, Clair Obscur Expedition, managed to set the world on fire, in large part thanks to its deep and thoughtful story, imaginative and gorgeous visuals, and a clever combat system. What sets Clair Obscur apart from others in the genre is how it makes use of not only parrying and dodging as active actions the player has to time with enemy attacks, but also the fact that each of its characters has unique mechanics all of their own, be it Gustav's overcharge system, or Lune's elemental juggling, or Mael's stance system. The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered. A remastered release of a classic open-world RPG that came out all the way back in 2006. The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered is not just only a great game in its own right, but also acts as a fun history lesson to help us understand just how Bethesda got its own follow-up in Skyrim. Oblivion Remastered takes place in idyllic pastures of Cyrodiil in the midst of an invasion from the various Oblivion realms. The player will also get to explore several cities and villages, while also partaking in epic questlines for various activities, from stealing to assassination and even some gladiatorial combat. Despite the almost 2 decades since its original 2006 release, the level of freedom offered by Oblivion still manages to feel unparalleled. Cyberpunk 2077 plus Phantom Liberty. With Cyberpunk 2077 and its Phantom Liberty expansion, CD Projekt Red ended up creating one of the most ambitious urban open-world games out there. along with telling a deep and compelling story with themes about rebellion, mortality, and the sense of self. Cyberpunk 2077, along with its spy thriller expansion Phantom Liberty, also managed to offer plenty of fun side activities for players to do as they drive around Night City, and try out their fancy cybernetic implants against gang members, corrupt cops, and corrupt mercenaries and corporate mercenaries at that. Dragon's Dogma 2. Dragon's Dogma 2 is one of the most unique open-world fantasy RPGs out there, along with a unique class system where the player is encouraged to keep switching between different classes to mix and match abilities. The game also features some epic boss fights in the form of mythical monsters to kill. Oh, and there's also the pawn system, where a player can create a companion for themselves, who can also be sent out to other players' games to assist them and come back with experience and new items. Pair this with a mind-bending plot that involves the world also getting messed up because of the player's own actions, in turn opening up even more epic boss fights for adventurous players to take on. And now that most of its technical issues have finally been ironed out, Dragon's Dogma 2 has become an excellent way to spend a weekend or two, or maybe three. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. While several games have tried to put players in the shoes of characters inspired by Indiana Jones, few have done it as well as Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. The first-person action-adventure game melds puzzle solving with intense action sequences, some platforming courtesy of Indy's whip, and plenty of stealth as players try to avoid crossing paths with hostile soldiers. Lies of P plus Overture. While we may not be getting ports or remasters for From Software's Bloodborne anytime soon, although we'd love that, we did get the next best thing in the form of Lies of P and its Overture DLC. The Souls-like action RPG puts players in the shoes of puppet mechanoid Pinocchio with a simple mission: find Mr. Geppetto. As he explores the city of Krat, however, he comes across deranged hostile puppets that he must deal with. Along the way, players get plenty of choices when it comes to what kind of weapons that they'll use, thanks to the game's unique weapon design and system where a player is free to mix and match different handles and edges to hopefully get unique weapons with their own movesets and special abilities. The Overture DLC expands things further by sending players into Krat's past, where they get to see the city before its fall. Ninja Gaiden 2 Black. A remaster release of classic hack-and-slash action game Ninja Gaiden 2, Ninja Gaiden 2 Black is by far one of the toughest games available these days, which is saying something. Putting players in the role of Ninja Ryu Hayabusa, the story revolves around the machinations of the Black Spider Ninja Clan, as they launch an assault against Hayabusa Village. As Ryu fights off these threats, players will have to learn how to effectively wield his various tools, from the straightforward katana to more advanced items. The game also allows players to dismember enemies, and while they can still attack after losing limbs, they can at least be killed off for good by using the obliteration technique. Shadow Labyrinth. While Shadow Labyrinth might not look like all that much from the outset, it ends up being quite a clever platforming game that melds exploration with gameplay inspired by classic arcade titles. Players take on the role of Swordsman Number 8, who wakes up on a mysterious planet. As they spend time exploring this planet accompanied by Puck, players will have to discover secrets and get new abilities as they figure out how to take on many of the various challenges they will face throughout their time in Shadow Labyrinth. Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. While the Ratchet & Clank franchise had gone mostly silent after the 2016 reboot, it came back with an absolute bang on the PS5, not only acting as a great showcase for the hardware capabilities of the at the time new console, but also just being a fantastic action-adventure game all in its own right. Along with telling a fun story with everyone's favorite Lombax, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart also introduces us to new character Rivet, who serves as a dual protagonist in the story. As the two desperately jump across different dimensions to stop the evil machinations of Dr. Nefarious, players will also find themselves making use of new, strange, and funny weapons to take on the enemies they face. Robocop Rogue City plus Unfinished Business. Robocop Rogue City, being such a fun experience with a surprising level of polish, is the biggest example for the fact that the AA game scene still exists and maybe even thriving. The game puts players in the shoes of Robocop, of course, as he takes on a variety of different missions in crime-ridden old Detroit. Along the way, players will get to make plenty of choices that further help define just how much humanity Robocop still has within him. The standalone expansion, Unfinished Business, adds even more content to the game, bringing with it a host of new challenges for Robocop to take on, as he takes on mercenaries and new enemy types occupying Omni Tower. Sifu. While action games have always been incredibly popular, few have ever managed to nail the martial arts genre as well as developer Slowclap did with Sifu. With players taking on the role of a martial artist out for revenge for the murder of their mentor, Sifu features unique action mechanics where players can make use of their own kung fu-styled movesets, as well as the environment to take on groups of enemies. The title features 15 different locations, across which players will get to take on a wide variety of enemies. Along with all this, the title also features a unique mechanic where a death leads to the protagonist aging, making their strikes deadlier but also making them more frail. Sifu has also gotten quite a bit more content thanks to extensive post-launch support by developer Slowclap. Dynasty Warriors Origins. While Koei Tecmo's Dynasty Warriors franchise has seen its fair share of ups and downs, the company undoubtedly struck gold with the release of Dynasty Warriors Origins. The game, introducing a brand new protagonist, also brings with it some of the grandest battles that the franchise has ever seen. The gameplay largely revolves around the player cutting down large swaths of enemy soldiers across various battlefields, as they also try and complete objectives to further continue the campaign of the various factions warring for supremacy over mainland China. Star Wars Jedi Survivor. After the success of Respawn's Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, the sequel served as a way for the studio to expand on every single aspect of the game. With 5 years having passed since the events of Fallen Order, Survivor once more puts players in the shoes of Cal Kestis as he sets off on a battle against the Empire. While things start out well enough, sure, a mission eventually goes badly enough to force Cal to get some allies for his struggle, including brand new characters as well as returning characters from Fallen Order. The gameplay offers considerably more options than its predecessor, with new stances that offer more chances for unique gameplay, as well as a more interesting skill tree this time around. Suikoden 1 and 2 Remaster. A remastered release of seminal RPGs that were originally made for the original PlayStation, Suikoden 1 and 2 Remaster is a great way for a new generation of players to experience a pair of the most unique RPGs to have ever been made. Along with the player taking on the role of a protagonist, players will also have to find and recruit special characters known as the Stars of Destiny into their own army, as they fight off the forces of evil. Both titles also feature heavily political storylines, with corruption playing a central role throughout their stories. What makes both titles even more fun to play back-to-back is the fact that they take place in the same world, so the sequel becomes a great way to see what has changed since the events of the first game. Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection. While the Uncharted series has been one of the most iconic franchises for PlayStation since the first game came out on the PS3, all good things must come to an end, sadly. Uncharted Legacy of Thieves features two titles, Uncharted 4: A Thief's End and Uncharted Lost Legacy. While A Thief's End focuses on the final adventure of protagonist Nathan Drake, Lost Legacy is a smaller scale game with brand new protagonists in Chloe and Nadine, as they face off against a warlord named Asav that they can get. When it comes to the gameplay side of things, both titles feature third-person action, plenty of areas to explore, puzzles to solve, and in the case of Legacy of Thieves, even one larger space where more experimental gameplay can actually be tried out. Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. While many of the best games out there can be described as being subtle, Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 is not one of them. Every bit as loud, brutal, and exaggerated as the Warhammer 40k settings demand, Space Marine 2 puts players in the power armor of Ultramarine turned Deathwatch soldier, turned back into Ultramarine Demetrian Titus, as he ends up on Imperial planets Avarax and Kataku, in the midst of the First Tyrannic War. Facing off against hordes of Tyranids, players must take and make use of the game's hybrid ranged and melee combat system to stop all opposition and complete various objectives. Once you're done with the campaign, the game also features extra missions in the operations mode, which, while meant to be played in co-op, can also be enjoyed solo along with AI-controlled teammates. God of War Ragnarok. Taking place a few years after the events of 2018's reboot, Ragnarok kicks things off with the coming of Fimbulwinter, as the player figures out how to best keep their people safe from their enemies. Ragnarok features a blend of excellent level design and offers several enhancements to gameplay, with bigger worlds to explore and plenty more skills to make use of in the game's frantic, high-impact combat. System Shock Remake. A remake of a classic sci-fi shooter/RPG hybrid from 1994, System Shock Remake does a masterful job of recreating the feeling of playing the original thanks to its unique art style that melds modern graphical technologies with a lo-fi look that maintains the vibrant color palette of the original. System Shock Remake is also one of the best ways to experience the origins of iconic evil AI Shodan, who serves as the primary antagonist for the player as they explore Citadel Station and, hopefully, try to figure out how they can survive and ultimately escape. Along the way, players will have to fight, sneak, and shoot their way through enemies that were once the human inhabitants of Citadel Station. Ender Magnolia Bloom in the Mist. While the indie game space has many 2D platforming titles, few have ever reached the quality that Ender Magnolia Bloom in the Mist manages to reach thanks to the title's strong level design, well thought out upgrades, and pretty interesting story. The game takes place in the land of fumes, which, because of unchecked signs, has started turning artificial beings, dubbed homunculi, into feral monsters. Players take on the role of an attuner named Lilac, who can save the homunculi from the gruesome fate. Players will get to explore a variety of zones, from abandoned factories and laboratories to ancient caverns and vibrant fields, as they explore the land of fumes and unlock new abilities to further aid exploration and combat. Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. This genre is no stranger to crafting compelling open-world games, and this quality is shown off quite well in Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. While it might be easy to just brush aside as a movie tie-in game, Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora ends up being a fantastic way to explore the world first seen in James Cameron's Avatar movies. In Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora, players must ultimately defend Pandora against the forces of the RDA. The game features a compelling main campaign, along with several side missions that help further flesh out this fantastic world. Gran Turismo 7. Quite easily the standard bearer for the modern driving sim game, Gran Turismo 7 has just about everything that a fan of cars and the culture surrounding cars and driving could hope for. Along with franchise classic gameplay mechanics like license tests returning, Gran Turismo 7 also features a massive collection of cars for players to collect, as well as constant updates that further improve the car collection of the game, as well as bringing in new events across various vehicle classes that players can compete for. Hitman: World of Assassination. Essentially the most complete package in terms of the Hitman trilogy, Hitman: World of Assassination features quite a bit of content for the intrepid single-player game fan out there. Along with an epic campaign spanning 3 games worth of locations and targets, the title also features the Freelancer mode, which combines the title's freeform gameplay with a sort of roguelite progression mechanic. Hitman: World of Assassination offers players plenty of unique ways to take out their targets, alongside a wide variety of items and weapons that can be used to accomplish just about any task the game throws the player's way throughout its levels, which span from the US to South America to India and even Dubai. Alan Wake 2. Quite easily one of the strangest games to have come out in recent times, Alan Wake 2 is a survival horror title that picks up more than a decade after the original Alan Wake. While the titular character serves as one of the protagonists, quite a few parts of the game have players taking on the role of FBI agent Saga Anderson, who is visiting Bright Falls to investigate the brutal ritualistic murder of fellow FBI agent Robert Nightingale. Along the way, the paths of Saga and Alan intersect in interesting fourth wall breaking ways, and Alan Wake must ultimately figure out the best way to end the story of Saga Anderson. Neva. Equal parts platforming game and atmospheric experience, Neva puts players in the shoes of a young woman, Alba, and a friendly wolf as they explore a world that is on the verge of dying. As is to be expected from a game by the developers of Greece, Neva features downright gorgeous art and a gripping soundtrack that adds several layers to the atmosphere as they explore a dying world. The gameplay revolves around Alba and her wolf companion slowly learning to work together as they complete platforming sections, combat encounters, and even a few puzzles along the way, all while the duo try and figure out how they can survive. Little Nightmares 2. A low-key experience, Little Nightmares 2 explores the wider world outside of the first game's setting of the Maw, with players in the shoes of a young boy named Mono as he explores the Pale City. The game makes use of a more minimalistic style of storytelling, leaving it up to the player to figure out the secrets behind the Pale City, the signal tower, and the things that lurk within the tower. Nobody Wants to Die. While narrative adventure games can often be quite fun, few actually match the level of polish and visual fidelity of critical hit games as Nobody Wants to Die. Taking place in the year 2329, the player takes on the role of NYPD detective in the Department of Mortality James Kara. With the gameplay largely revolving around puzzle solving and exploring the overall narrative, players will have to figure out the strange circumstances behind a mysterious death, affecting a victim that actually wasn't supposed to die, a member of the New York City elite. As the mystery unfurls, players will find themselves in the hunt for a serial killer, as they also explore concepts of mortality and what immortality truly means for a person that has more money than they could spend over several lifetimes. A Plague Tale Requiem. A direct sequel to A Plague Tale Innocence, A Plague Tale Requiem picks things up around 6 months after the events of its predecessor. The story revolves around siblings Amicia and Hugo de Rune, who decide to travel south in order to try and look for a cure for Hugo's affliction. The gameplay is an iteration over the first title, with players taking control of Amicia and being helped out by Hugo from time to time. However, both characters also have plenty of new abilities to play around with in combat encounters. A Plague Tale Requiem also acts as an absolute feast for the eyes, considering its incredible level of visual fidelity and strong art direction. Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster. An RE Engine remake of a classic zombie game, Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster has players take on the role of intrepid photojournalist Frank West, as he is exploring the circumstances surrounding a military-enforced lockdown in the sleepy town of Willamette, Colorado. In a series of events, West, along with a bunch of other survivors, will find themselves trapped in a mall that also happens to house hordes and even more hordes of zombies, as well as a few psychotic lunatics lurking around. West only has 3 days of real-world time to figure out a way to escape from the mall with as many allies as he can. The original Dead Rising, and by extension the Deluxe Remaster, is famous for the immense level of customization offered by the game when it comes to its weapon crafting system, focusing primarily on melee weapons. Pacific Drive. A unique take on the roguelite formula, Pacific Drive combines the sense of adventure one might find in exploring randomly generated levels, along with the joy that often comes from working on a beaten-up car to gradually improve it with better parts over time. The player is put into the shoes of the driver as they explore the Olympic exclusion zone after accidentally getting pulled through a vortex. The zone is full of strange activity, however, with even roads constantly shifting and moving about, and the player must find other survivors and eventually, hopefully, a way out. To help the player accomplish this, they have a car known only as Remnant, which can be improved with new loot that you find, as well as new parts that you can craft once you get the right materials. Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector. While the original Citizen Sleeper was a, well, pardon the pun here, sleeper hit in its own right, thanks to its excellent writing and unique gameplay elements inspired by Disco Elysium, Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector is an improvement in just about every single aspect. Carrying over its predecessor's strong anti-capitalism slant with an interesting story, Citizen Sleeper 2 revolves around the player trying to figure out a way to escape the ownership of Lane, and in the process ending up in a lawless portion of the Hellion star system known only as the Belt. Death Stranding 2 on the Beach. While Kojima Productions' first outing as an independent studio after Konami, Death Stranding, was certainly an interesting take and a unique game all in its own right, the sequel here, Death Stranding 2 on the Beach, takes things up a notch in every way possible. Along with broadening the core gameplay loop of making deliveries across long treks, Death Stranding 2 also features a more grand story of wider scope, with more interesting main villains along the way. Along with all of this, the core combat has also seen massive improvements, giving players more tools to take on an even wider variety of enemies, ranging from well-armed humans to massive kaiju-sized BTs. This, along with a jump in visual fidelity, makes Death Stranding 2 on the Beach a journey well worth taking. Black Myth Wukong. Black Myth Wukong features some downright fantastic boss designs and is further elevated by the fact that the game's combat can be described as being nothing short of absolutely joyous in how well it controls, how responsive the game feels overall, and just how well the encounters are set up to get players to use every single tool that they have in their kit. There's a reason, after all, why Black Myth Wukong would launch to immense success in terms of concurrent player counts as well as copies sold. Hogwarts Legacy. Now, it's easy to describe Hogwarts Legacy as an open-world action-adventure game, but that would be ignoring how lovingly it recreates the world of Harry Potter that longtime fans of the book series and movies could finally explore in depth. While the title doesn't really do anything new, it is still a fantastic way to spend some time, owing to the care with which the titular Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry and its surrounding areas have been recreated here. Players can live out their dreams of being an inspiring wizard and witch in the world of Harry Potter, attending classes, getting stronger at magic, and even helping quell a goblin rebellion all in the process. Star Wars Outlaws. While Star Wars Outlaws may have been released to middling reception and suffered from plenty of problems to be sure, several updates later since its release have turned the game into a must-play adventure, especially for those fans of Star Wars. Now that plenty of the game's fundamental issues, like broken stealth mechanics, have been fixed, the story of Kay Vess is quite a bit of fun to experience, especially thanks to the open-world structure of the title, complete with different factions vying for your attention. The adventure also continues thanks to the release of 2 expansions for the game, Dead Man's Hand and A Pirate's Fortune, both of which add plenty more content to an already feature-rich title. Eric's Home: The Stolen Dream. A unique take on narrative games, Eric's Home: The Stolen Dream has players exploring the city of Eric's Home in the shoes of Hannah. With the major emphasis on stealth here, Eric's Home: The Stolen Dream gives players plenty of chances to figure out the story behind the world as Hannah slowly continues as her quest to find her brother. The game also features gorgeous visuals, with the city of Eric's Home being one of the most interesting settings for a game in recent times. Along with this, players will also get to make use of an extensive arsenal of tools as they sneak around the guards of the industrializing city. Marvel's Spider-Man 2. While 2018's Marvel's Spider-Man was a fantastic return of the web-slinging superhero to video games, its sequel, appropriately titled Marvel's Spider-Man 2, decided to expand on the original's ideas in some really epic ways. Along with featuring 2 Spider-Men, Marvel's Spider-Man 2 also gives us a deeper look into the stories and motivations behind both of the superheroes. Pair that with an incredible open-world New York that is an absolute joy to traverse through thanks to Spider-Man's set of abilities, as well as a fun rogues gallery to take on throughout the story, and plenty of side content, and Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is in many ways one of the best superhero experiences currently available on the PS5. Horizon Forbidden West. A follow-up to Horizon Zero Dawn, Horizon Forbidden West once again puts players in the shoes of Aloy as she decides to explore parts of the western coast of the continent. Along with brand new visuals and a deeper look into the overall world and lore behind the Horizon franchise, Forbidden West also gives us improved combat that feels a lot more dynamic, along with more fun and intense boss fights that will have players making use of just about every single tool that they have in Aloy's disposal. Horizon Forbidden West, along with its Burning Shores expansion, can, in many ways, be described as the ideal sequel, where it builds on the foundation set by its predecessor in new and interesting ways. Kingdom Come: Deliverance 2. In a genre that is dominated by fantasy and sci-fi works, Kingdom Come: Deliverance 2 manages to stand out thanks to its use of real-world historical settings. Along with exploring the lands of Trotsky in the 1400s, players who once more take the role of Henry not only get embroiled in a plot that can be best described as a political thriller meets war story, but they mostly also live in an interesting simulationist game world. Kingdom Come: Deliverance 2 will have you squint your eyes as you try and make out text in a book, depending on Henry's level of literacy, and train with swordsmasters to learn new ways to swing your sword, all while also trying to make sure that you don't die of starvation or villagers don't run away from you because you haven't had a bath in a while. These gameplay systems makes for a great way to kill a few dozen hours or more. Hi-Fi Rush. The last hurrah, at least for the time being, for Tango Gameworks before the studio was shut down by Microsoft last year before being picked up again by Krafton. Hi-Fi Rush is a unique hack-and-slash action game that rewards players that have good rhythm. The unique hook of the game is that players are encouraged to attack, jump, and dodge their way through fights to the beat of the background music. While you can still, of course, finish the game if you miss every beat, like me, landing the beat with good timings rewards you with higher damaging moves. Pair that with a vibrant, sort of cel-shaded art style, hilarious writing, an excellent soundtrack, and some downright fantastic boss fights, and you get one of the most fun and unique action games out there. Banisher's Ghosts of New Eden. Now, when it comes to third-person action RPGs that have a heavy emphasis on their narratives, Banisher's Ghosts of New Eden is one of the most interesting releases of the lot. Taking place in the unique setting in 1695, players take on the role of banishers as they set out to explore the lands, figure out the origins of curses and hauntings, and most importantly, unravel plenty of mysteries that could lead to some very uneasy answers to important questions. The first Berserker Kazan. In the over a decade and a half since the release of the first game that could be called a Souls-like, Demon Souls on the PS3, we've seen plenty of studios take a stab at making their own. Few have gotten as close to the standards set out by From Software as Neepal with the first Berserker Kazan. Alongside taking place in an interesting world based on the DNF franchise, the first Berserker Kazan also features some strong action RPG gameplay, complete with a wide variety of weapons and incredibly challenging boss fights. Pair all this with a downright gorgeous art style and you are bound to end up with a really good time. Jusant. At the outset, Jusant looks like it will be an incredibly simple game. Its core gameplay mechanic actually revolves entirely around climbing after all. However, while the gameplay mechanics themselves might feel simple enough, Jusant also uses those same mechanics to deliver an incredibly powerful and emotional story that is slowly unraveled as the player, in the shoes of a nameless boy climbing a gigantic rock tower mountain, makes their climb. Sure, there might not be much in the way of stakes, especially since you can't really die in the game. However, the strong, often emotional writing throughout Jusant more than makes up for any shortcomings that might be present in the gameplay department. Mafia: The Old Country. While Mafia 3 might have served as a bit of a detour for Hangar 13 with its focus on open world gameplay, with Mafia: The Old Country the studio went back to the franchise's roots in more ways than one. Not only is it a linear story-based game with set missions that players will take on, its story is also taking us all the way back to the eponymous Old Country, where the Sicilian Mafia first originated. The gritty early 1900s mob story features Enzo Favara as the new protagonist, as players live out his fight for survival in his attempts to get a better life for himself after living through a brutal life filled with forced labor. Mafia: The Old Country was an incredible return to form for developer Hangar 13. Senua's Saga: Hellblade 2. While the original Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice was an interesting game anchored by strong performances, especially from lead actor Melina Juergens as the titular Senua, Senua's Saga: Hellblade 2 cranks up just about every single aspect up to 11 here. Not only has the gameplay seen plenty of improvements, the story itself, along with the presentation, have been upgraded so much the word cinematic honestly hardly does the title justice. Senua's Saga: Hellblade 2 once again takes us to the Viking Iceland, where Senua has to take on difficult battles against the forces of tyranny to save not only victims, but also save herself in the process. Metal Gear Solid Delta: Snake Eater. When it first came out, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater was widely considered to be one of the best games for its home platform, the PlayStation 2. Now, 21 years later, we have a remake in the form of Metal Gear Solid Delta: Snake Eater. Not only do we get upgraded visuals and improved gameplay with modern control schemes in this remake, we also get to re-experience a fantastic spy thriller set during the Cold War, the events of which ended up having repercussions for the entirety of the Metal Gear franchise as a whole. Snake Eater has players take on the role of Naked Snake as he sets off on Operation Snake Eater to take down the boss, her elite squad known as the Cobra Unit, as well as commander of Gru Volgin. Gears of War Reloaded. It's no secret that the original Gears of War was one of the most important games on the Xbox 360, helping spawn an entire franchise that is still going on to this very day. Celebrating this history, developer The Coalition brought back the original Gears of War with a fresh coat of paint. Calling it a faithful remaster, Gears of War Reloaded features high-resolution assets, as well as full optimization to run on all modern-day gaming platforms, including, of course, like in this list, the PS5. Along with the excellent campaign that kicks off the saga of Marcus Phoenix in his war against the Locust threat, Gears of War Reloaded includes plenty of multiplayer features, including co-op mode for the campaign, as well as some competitive multiplayer. Echoes of the End. While a debut outing for Studio Mercury Games, it could be easy to assume that the developers behind Echoes of the End have had quite a bit of experience with game design. The game may not feature complex customization options and deep puzzles, rather it features fun combat, a gorgeous world, and puzzles with just the right amount and level of complexity to not get you frustrated. Pair that with some excellent writing and characterization for protagonist Rin and her traveling companion Abram Finlay, and you have a great single-player campaign that doesn't outstay its welcome thanks to its nice 14-hour runtime. Animal Well. While at first glance Animal Well might not look like much thanks to its art style making use of stark and simple color contrasts, often with black backgrounds in most of its scenes. Spending a little time, however, with this title reveals one of the most interesting platforming titles to have come out since, I don't know, maybe Hollow Knight? Animal Well puts players in the shoes of a small creature that has freshly hatched from a flower and must now explore the world to figure out their own life. What sets the title apart is how well it makes use of its art style, which features wonderfully detailed environments all over the place, not only for the sake of gameplay, but for the great atmosphere as well. Along with its platforming trappings, Animal Well also serves as a sort of horror title thanks to the player not having ways to actually fight back against creatures that might harm you. Players must instead make use of clever uses in the world around them to figure out ways around dangerous obstacles. So, what are your thoughts on this? Go ahead and share them in the comments below. And if you like this video, please subscribe to the channel and enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon to get new video updates. We upload every day and would really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching.